When it comes to budgeting, everyone has an opinion on what the best budgeting method is. Some people swear by the 50-30-20 rule, while others say that the envelope method is the best way to save money. There are apparently a ton of amazing budgeting methods, some of which I'm sure that you've tried before. Yet, NerdWallet's consumer budgeting report shows that over 80% of Americans report exceeding their monthly budget. So why is it so hard to stick to a budget, let alone create one? Why is everyone exceeding their budgets? And how can you make it so that your budgeting method doesn't fail, so that you don't overspend and you don't take steps backwards on your finances? In this video, I'm gonna cover 7 common pitfalls of budgeting that you should avoid so that you can keep more money in your wallet. For those new here, hello and welcome. My name is Lissa Prudencio. I'm an accredited financial counselor and the founder of Wealth for Women of Color, where I help make wealth more accessible to women of color. All right, let's first get this B word out of the way. Some people hate the word or the thought of budgeting, when a budget is really just supposed to be a plan for your money. Having a budget or a money plan should be strategic, and it's there so that you can craft the life that you want out of the money that you have, both now and in the future. I find this important to point out because so much of personal finance has to do with mindset and emotions. You'll be surprised to find out that a lot of the pitfalls I have on this list have less to do with the logistics of budgeting and more to do with behavioral psychology. In any case, let's jump into the list and find out what pitfalls you should be avoiding. The first pitfall is not having financial goals. This budgeting pitfall occurs when you don't define your money goals. Now, it can actually happen when you have a budget, when you actually budget your money, but you don't define financial goals that are most important to you. So what are financial goals or money goals? I consider it any goal that you have in life that requires money. So many different things can count as a money goal. Paying off debt, starting a business, saving for a vacation, saving for a house, building an emergency fund, and so much more. People usually budget their day-to-day categories like housing and food and medical expenses and toiletries. However, it's common that people don't always factor in what's truly important to them in life. And when you don't have defined goals, it's gonna be really hard to stay motivated to stick to your budget. So you have to be intentional. Here's what you can do. Sit down for 10 minutes. You can hit pause and sit for 10 minutes. Write down 5 of your financial goals. In other words, what things come to mind that you want in life that require money? Now, instead of just writing those 5 goals, you want to write down your why behind each goal. Why do you want the goal? Is it for security? Is it for freedom? Is it for access? Is it for fun? Is it for status? Why do you want that thing? Then, when you have a better idea of what your goals are, you can create categories or buckets for those goals within your budget. Maybe you have a vacation fund or a category for additional debt payments. When you reflect on your goals and you plan for them in your budget, it's gonna make you so much more likely to stick to your budget and your plan. Budgeting pitfall number 2, having unrealistic financial goals. So you've done number 1, you have some financial goals, and that's great because it's way better than not having any goals, but how realistic are those goals? Having unrealistic financial goals makes it hard for a budget to work because the numbers simply don't work. When the numbers don't work, you don't see progress. And when you don't see progress, it derails your progress even more. You're just not motivated. Here's an example. Let's say that you want to get out of debt in 5 years. And these are your numbers. You have $200,000 worth of debt, you have a $30,000 salary, and you have $100 of extra money in your budget every month that you can put towards debt. This means $100 times 12 months is $1,200 extra towards debt every year. If you multiply that by 5, that means you can put an extra $6,000 towards your debt payments in a 5-year span. Is your goal to get out of debt possible? Remember that debt is $200,000. Now, technically, yes, you can get out of debt. I'm not saying you can't get out of debt in 5 years, but not at this current budget. These numbers are telling you that things in your life need to change. At the end of the day, unrealistic goals means a lack of progress, which means less motivation, which means you're not going to stick to your budget. Whereas realistic goals equals progress, equals motivation, equals you're more likely to stick to a budget. So what are your options if you have unrealistic financial goals? Number one, you can adjust your budget by either making more money or spending less or doing both. Number two, you can adjust your goals by making them more realistic based on your current financial situation and the projections that you have. Or you do a combination of both. Adjust your budget and adjust your goals until they fit. Budgeting pitfall number three, not having a fun fund. A fun fund is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bucket of your money that you dedicate for fun. Now, fun can be anything that you define as fun for yourself. The point of this bucket of money is that you can and should use it guilt-free on the things or experiences that bring you joy in life. The reason that not having a fun fund is a common budgeting pitfall that leads to a failed budget is because when people don't plan for fun, it ends up coming out of other buckets. Beyond the necessities in your budget, carve out what those wants are in your life. What brings you joy that has a price tag attached to it? Is it a weekly massage? Is it a monthly manicure and pedicure? Is it saving up for a concert? Create a flexible use fun bucket in your budget. The key here is do not deprive yourself, because it's rare that you're gonna say no to fun 100% of the time. You're always gonna end up spending on things that bring you joy. So rather than overspending and pulling money from other buckets, all you have to do is plan for these types of expenses. Budgeting pitfall number four, not having an emergency fund. Not having an emergency fund is what often leads to overspending and not sticking to a budget. This is because the purpose of an emergency fund is to cover unexpected, unavoidable, and often urgent expenses. So when these emergencies come up, whether it's a loss of income or a medical issue, you usually have no choice but to spend money. And if you don't have money already set aside for it, you end up overspending by taking from other areas, or you simply put expenses on a credit card or take out a loan or have some other form of indebtedness, and that debt just puts you in a further hole. If you don't have an emergency fund, you can watch my video, which is a complete guide to emergency funds. This bucket of money in emergency fund is truly one of the most important financial foundations that you can have to set yourself up for success, not just in budgeting, but generally building wealth. Budgeting pitfall number five, confusing irregular expenses with emergencies. A common budgeting pitfall is when you don't plan for irregular expenses. So irregular expenses are those expenses that happen less frequently than monthly, so maybe every other month, once a year, twice a year, as well as one-off expenses, things that are just a one-time thing. I actually think that many people are good at monthly budgeting, especially when people have regular bi-weekly paychecks or monthly paychecks. And if most of your expenses occur monthly and your lifestyle doesn't change much, it's really easy to plan around your cash flow a lot better. What happens is that when people don't plan for the irregular expenses, they get thrown off when those expenses hit. Or they dip into their emergency fund, which is all fine and dandy until an actual emergency hits and there's no money for the actual emergency. So how do you solve for irregular expenses or even one-off expenses that you can't predict? Here are two approaches, and you can use both: sinking funds and flexible buckets. So a sinking fund is a dedicated bucket of money that you set aside to pay for a future expense. This expense could be anything from a new car or a down payment for a home or a vacation or a wedding or even a brand new TV. When you know what something is going to cost, or you have a close estimate and you have an approximate timeline of when you want that thing, you can gradually save money towards it. Simply calculate how much you need and divide it by how many months you have between now and when you need the money. When you see what that number is, you can determine if it's realistic to put aside this much money in your sinking fund every month. Sinking funds can be used for a whole lot of things: planning for a wedding, planning for a vacation, even your annual auto insurance policy, or any annual subscription that you have. Now, a flexible bucket is kind of like a sinking fund in that you're putting money into it every month, but with this bucket, there's not really a goal of what you're gonna use it for. You can pick an amount of how much to have in it, usually $500 or $1,000, and this flexible bucket allows you room to go over other buckets in your budget or just cover things that you didn't anticipate. The key with irregular expenses is as they come about, you'll remember about it so that you can estimate them better in the future. Maybe you forgot about your annual Amazon Prime subscription, so you didn't set aside any money in it for your budget. This year, you cover it with your flex bucket. Now for the next year, you can actually create a sinking fund for it and contribute over the next 12 months in that sinking fund. All right, that was a lot for number 5. Quick intermission. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button and make sure to subscribe. It's gonna help me reach more people so I can help more people. Budgeting pitfall number 6. Irregular check-ins. This pitfall occurs when people have budgets, but they don't review them regularly. It's a great start to actually have a budget and have a plan for your money, but the real accountability comes when you're tracking your progress against your plan. A lot of times people only check in on their budget or create the budget when something seems to be off or not right, or when expenses are spiraling out of control. When you think of that, it's no surprise that a lot of people hate the B word, or they hate budgeting. It's associated for when things are going out of control. Instead, you should know that budgets will work when you check in on them regularly and make adjustments. Here's the best part. There's no set rule on how often you should be checking your budget. It's really going to depend on what works for you. Some people check theirs daily, while other people check their budgets monthly or quarterly. Actually, here's the real best part. Not all financial experts are going to agree with this, but there is a world where you've built up such a great money management system that you can go without a budget, or more like having an unstructured budget. But until you get to that point, until you get to the point where there's automation in your money management system, where you have a lot of extra cash flow, and where you have a solid understanding of your overall financial picture, I strongly consider having structure in your budgeting check-ins. So set a recurring reminder in your calendar, aka money dates, with yourself or even with a partner. If you don't know how often to do it, start with bi-weekly. Budgeting pitfall number 7. Picking the wrong budgeting method. Wait, there's a wrong budgeting method? Remember at the beginning of the video when I said that everyone has an opinion on how to budget and what is the best way to budget? The thing is, as cliche as it sounds, personal finance is personal. So if your budgeting method isn't working for you, you can try to tweak it until it works, or maybe, just maybe, it's not the right budgeting method for you. For me, it wasn't until 3 or 4 years ago that I discovered zero-based budgeting and started using it. And it actually didn't work for me when I initially tried, but when I stuck with it, it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. So I love that method, but that method's not for everyone. Now before that, I had tried traditional budgeting on a spreadsheet and other apps like Mint, rest in peace to Mint, but nothing seemed to work that great. So how can you find the right budgeting method for you? Honestly, it's trial and error. Comment if you want me to make a video about different types of budgeting methods, and I'm happy to run through the pros and cons of all the different methods like zero-based budgeting, the 50-30-20 method, the envelope method, and others. All right, to summarize, here are the 7 budgeting pitfalls to avoid: not having financial goals, instead create financial goals. Number 2, not having realistic financial goals, so create realistic financial goals. Number 3, not having a fund, so make sure to create that fund. Number 4, not having an emergency fund. This one is mission critical. Definitely start your emergency fund if you don't already have one. Number 5, confusing irregular expenses with emergencies. Plan for your irregular expenses with sinking funds and flexible buckets. Number 6, irregular check-ins. So put something in your calendar and check on your budget on a regular basis. And pitfall number 7, picking the wrong budgeting method. Keep trying until you find one that works for you. I hope this was helpful, and until next time, peace out.